Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Hey, for us, all good? You?
Good, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on Drag and Drop. Thank you for agreeing. I know we've known each other for a while, so I'm glad to finally have you on.
For sure. A pleasure to be here for us.
It'd be great to start with for anyone who may not know anything about you, a bit of a background, bit of introduction to yourself.
So, I've been with OutSystems basically forever. Landed my first job at OutSystems in 2005, and I've done a lot of things. Since then, I've started naturally as a developer,
Yeah,
in the trenches, building software for our first customer that at the time was Optimus. Did a bunch of projects, and then I moved into solution architecture. In solution architecture, I got a very good grasp of what people are looking for because I'm seeing people selecting the software and selecting the platform. And I had a great opportunity of moving to Asia Pacific in 2014 to do the same. So I basically started the office together with four colleagues. I was the SA, creating the SA team there, and basically starting a market with OutSystems. 2020 comes in, I come back to Portugal, and I come to the world of customer success that I think we're going to speak
yeah,
about a bit
yes.
today. Besides that, two small kids that make life hectic and fun every day, lovely wife, and having fun for sure.
Amazing. And going back to obviously, yeah, like, you've been at OutSystems for so long, right? Can you kind of talk me through, when you started, obviously it was very compared to now. It's, we were just together at a conference which had 4,000 people, right? So kind
Yeah.
of going back to when you first started, what did you know about systems? At the time, were you in a situation where you just thought, okay, I'm early in my career, this is an opportunity, or did you know much about what their vision was and what they were trying to achieve?
I think I was much more naive than that in the early days.
Okay.
I was always in love with engineering. I loved math and physics. When I was in school, when I went to physics in university, I actually fell in love with computers, and that's when I started studying computers. And I think what I saw was just a very energetic company with great people working, building a platform that was completely different from what had seen before. And I think that made it interesting enough. And one characteristic that was very particular is that customers loved the platform, they loved the projects, they loved working with OutSystems, and that made it quite straightforward for me to just stay and just wait for the next challenge with OutSystems. It's just the energy of innovation and getting things done and successful customers that is
Yeah,
many times not easy to get. That's what just made it easy to stay and just grow inside the company. Also, there was
yeah.
a lot of opportunity. It was a small startup. When I
Sure.
joined, the company was probably below 40 people.
Wow.
So, and all hands would be just us in a small room
Yeah, yeah,
talking with some chairs and
yeah.
some people sitting
Wow.
on the
And you mentioned obviously, moving to APAC, and APAC is a really big region for our
Yes.
systems. How was it when you kind of went there, kind of, and trying to build that up with, your colleagues, what was the response like to, companies, businesses hearing about our systems and what it could do?
So I think APAC was interesting because it felt like when I went to Asia Pacific, it felt a bit like going back to the early days in
Yeah,
here in I'm based in Lisbon, right? So here
yeah,
in Europe and United States, because most vendors are not focused on Asia Pacific. Maybe they
yeah,
focus in Japan,
yeah,
very specific teams. But if you think about Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, right? Those are not countries of focus by nature because there's so much focus on the United States.
yeah,
And what I felt is that in the beginning, we were quite alone in evangelizing a concept. Again, that's what I've been doing in the beginning in
yeah,
2013. It felt like I was evangelizing a concept again that people many times didn't know just because vendors are not investing. And that, as you said,
yeah,
OutSystems is very particular because we have so much presence in Asia Pacific. The big ones are there, obviously, the Microsofts of the
yeah.
world and Salesforce, etc. But all the niche players we're used to find everywhere else, typically
Mhm.
they have very small teams. So it's not very common to find them. To be honest, on the ground, everything is more or less the same. People want to get things done. They're smart, and when they find a good opportunity, they just bet on
Yeah.
it. And they work with the platform, and they did great things at the time.
And obviously you went to Singapore, but you're
Mhm.
targeting kind of all of APAC. Was there any that kind of took to it quicker than other regions? You know, like for example, obviously APAC is a big region, right? Obviously Australia's in there as well. And,
Mhm.
you know, from someone looking from outside in, Singapore looks like a very big region
Yeah.
for OutSystems. Were there others that kind of were similar in kind of adopting it, or was it kind of just starting one place and then slowly expanding?
Definitely starting in Singapore. I think, growth in companies many times, especially when you are in the beginning, depends a lot on those early opportunities that you find, the people that you find that make things grow. So we started in Singapore. We had a great opportunity there at the time with one of the government agencies that became almost the platform for the growth of the company
Mm,
for the next years. Funny enough, the other country that took off really, really well at that time, right in the beginning, was the Philippines. Philippines has lots of people, they have lots of stuff there. They need to build very, very large conglomerates. And by chance, we were able to get access to that type of companies. And the challenge is so big that it became almost a no-brainer for them to use OutSystems. I would say you have also Japan as a bit of
yeah.
always a different country because the decision processes are very different there. We started slowly. We acquired a lot of customers at the time, but they would tend to
Mm,
be very cautious. They have a different way of looking at
yeah.
software and the way they decide. They tend to buy the software, experiment for very long, and
Mm,
then really buy the software, which meant that we had a lot of customers in Japan, but a lot of them were experimenting. Not
yeah.
like maybe in the Philippines where you would spend 2 months doing a proof of concept with a customer and then it goes big and he buys
Yeah.
the enterprise version and has a big project with lots of developers. So I would say Japan took off also very early, but with a lot of experimentation that took years then to become one of the
Mm,
the, the biggest countries for
yeah.
OutSystems.
And you mentioned obviously you moved back and your focus has been on, you know, the customer success side, which is really key now having so many customers globally. You know, how would you define true customer success in your eyes?
But I don't know if I'm going to try to define customer success because that's a very
Sure.
a very bold task. But I think I can tell you what we do as customer success at
Yeah.
OutSystems. I think conceptually everybody agrees that customer success is about getting customers to achieve maximum value with your product. So you want them to use every corner of the product to get value. We might not agree sometimes is how to get there, right? So is it the customer success department? Is it support? Is it sales? How
Mm,
does it work? For us at OutSystems, what we did already a few years ago quite well was to try as much as possible to integrate the concept of account team and to have a team working together from different departments, sales, solution architecture, customer success, technical success, to work together with common playbooks to get customers to be successful. So it's obviously a team effort. From a customer success perspective, I can tell you that our main focus is to make sure our customers build software. They use the product, they build software, that we build champions inside our customers so that we have a way to grow in the future. And that's what we're trying to achieve with people, process, technology, reminders, guides, everything we do every day. What we're thinking about is how do we get customers to build more software with our platform.
yeah. And what you touched on, I think, and a lot of people I've spoken to this year have really highlighted the champion within the customer is quite a key
Yeah,
person to have, right? Because that helps that journey of someone internally advocating as well, as long as not just your team going in and kind of helping kind of advise. You've got someone internally helping to hopefully grow and build more things with the investment that they've spent.
for sure. One of the metrics that we use internally is how many champions do you have in a customer.
Yeah,
Having only one is a pretty big risk because you're completely
yeah,
dependent on one person to make the technology be successful inside. I feel that sometimes we are so focused on making the platform successful that we might forget that the success of the platform is completely dependent on the success of the champions that you have. So you need to help them help you. So you need to help them
yeah,
communicate internally, communicate their success. That's actually a program we have right now that is we can help a champion create a success story. So we can have the slides. You can even have like LinkedIn banners and easy
yeah,
publicize what he can achieve without systems. And if you do something great without systems or any other technology, why wouldn't you want to publicize it? Right.
yeah, of
So
course.
we
Yeah,
try also to leverage that. The champions are absolutely fundamental for us to
yeah.
be successful.
Yeah. And talking about your, successful customers and that you see globally, what are some common threads that you see for these ones that are successful, and how does their typical kind of first year look like?
I would say that if I have to choose one condition for success, just one, and I forget about all the other 50,000
Yeah.
metrics you can invent, is when starting, the customer has to have a valuable project inside. Because that project will drive everything else. It will drive the team, it will drive investment, it will drive focus.
Mm.
If you don't have a project with true value, to deliver, it's very, very hard to be successful. With that said, and if we try to structure a bit how to get to the success with that project, normally at OutSystems, we break it down in what we call the readies. We talk about platform ready, team ready, and project ready. So making sure that you have everything you need for your platform to integrate and to be set up properly inside the organization. Team is more or less obvious, right? You need a good team structure, like a well-formed team with product owners, a senior tech lead, preferably the right number of developers. Typically, customers start with
Yeah.
2, 3 developers, and then project ready. And this is where it's quite important to choose the right first project. I would say that I see two types of customers. Either one that, well, I see more, but the ones that are successful, either one that starts with the first project that has value but is not a giant challenge. So the customer is actually experimenting with the technology,
Yeah.
but you will have enough value in 2, 3 months to show around the organization, to show to his team as well, for them to feel the gratification and extend beyond that project. The app pipeline, we're constantly talking about getting more app pipeline at OutSystems. And then we have more ambitious customers that are customers that actually start with a very large project. And there it's great. So we have everything we need to choose to derive value with the platform. But we have to be very careful on how to get there. So the team that we have in place, especially leadership, project management leadership, and technical leadership, architecture, the integration with the remainder of the IT capabilities inside the organization becomes very, very important from the get-go. So I think the most common, obviously, is a customer starting smaller, and we don't
Mm.
get customers doing multi-million projects
Yeah.
every day getting started. So I would say that there are two flavors, with or without a partner. Regardless of if they're with or without a partner, there's an initial stage of onboarding the technology into the organization, getting well integrated, single sign-ons, for example, security clearances, all of those things. Then there's a stealth moment of development, and
Yeah.
typically imagine 3, 4 months first value, and then we start working production. And that's when things start getting a bit more interesting, because now we need to think about version control, monitoring, patching, hot fixing. All of those
Yeah.
things are typically something that happens in the second half of that first year. So the customer actually can pace himself, focus on
Yeah.
development, and focus on getting ready for production and new teams and new applications in the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah. And in this process, obviously, a lot of people always talk about misconceptions before adopting a platform, but I think there's still misconceptions even when you have a customer, right? People
For sure.
internally, what are some common misconceptions you come across, even though they might already be a customer that you're kind of trying to tackle?
So I think I would select two. One, that you can just experiment to make a technology successful. That's the one we suffer with the most. Someone that is just we're trying to figure out what is going to be the use case for OutSystems, which is okay, but you need to figure out, and you need to figure out a use case that is interesting enough for the organization. Because if you're just playing for a year, your CFO will probably not love the fact that he needs
Yeah.
to renew a technology that didn't deliver
Mm.
anything. So you can experiment, but you have to experiment with value in sight, because if you don't, it's going to be very, very hard. I think the other misconception that we also find sometimes is, and that one I would say is more of related with low code in general, is that you think low code is something that is for small projects, so you can actually just throw the junior teams in there and
Yeah.
see what happens. And the fact is that with low code, you can tackle very interesting engineering projects, and engineering projects have challenges way beyond building the software,
Yeah.
right? It's architecting the software, thinking the requirements. And I think having, especially if you're starting with a new technology, it's very important to have at least one senior technical person in there that can not only make it very successful because he can bring his
Yeah.
architect brain, making sure you can connect in the right ways and he maximizes the value of the technology, but he can also understand the value of the technology a junior developer might not even understand the impact of what he could drive with what he has in his hands. And the importance of having that senior is because he will also be a translator to the rest of the
Yeah.
organization of what's happening there. So I think that's what we see sometimes is this idea of experimenting, throws just some interns and try to get something. And
Mhm.
they can. The truth is they can do it and they can do very interesting things. But I think it's very hard to go beyond that stage if that's all you have.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you find sometimes that even though, aside from that, even though they've already adopted the platform, they want to build things, they're still battling with the internal development team, which may be a traditional team, right?
Mhm.
That obviously now have this platform that they have to learn. And can that sometimes, what's the word? Just, obviously you have got everyone invested in this platform, right? So you've got developers who, okay, they have to use it, but there might be some disruption because they might now be looking for another job to move on. Is that something that comes up occasionally or not really?
I feel it was more frequent in the past.
Yeah.
I actually remember a healthcare customer. It was an IT. It was actually an IT company that built a big healthcare
Yeah.
software in Brazil, and they had to send a message to the whole IT team saying, "Look, either you are on board with this or you don't have a way in this
Oh, wow.
company," because they really want to migrate everything from legacy to OutSystems. In the early days, you would find a lot of that, a lot of resistance
Mm,
to this type of automation technology because people were very comfortable with their Java and their .NET that was
yeah.
so established and the frameworks. And also they felt that was the future. To be honest, I feel that nowadays there's so much disruption in the way a developer
Yeah.
works that people don't think about like that anymore. They know the way that you work today is not going to be the way
Yeah.
you work tomorrow for sure, right? Probably in
Yeah.
6 months, you're already doing things
Yeah.
differently with a different language. So I feel that 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 stopped being such an obvious thing. People still have their own emotional
Yeah.
attachment.
Mm,
I love Angular JS or
yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
People have those attachments. And sometimes what you do see is IT teams are literally segregated. Like you have the procurement team
Yeah.
or you have the HR team or you have more the core team. And those teams tend to have very little communication of technologies. Each team selects its own technology and they just do it there. And it's very hard to jump
Yeah.
outside. But I would say that the pure technical detractor became much more rare today compared with what I used to see
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And with customers who are new to our systems, what should they be focusing on from day one to kind of, to set themselves up for long-term success?
So this is a personal opinion because there's a lot of ways of doing things, and this
Yeah.
touches the partners.
Yeah.
When you partner, do you build with partners or do you
Mm,
build internally? I feel that from very early on, it's important for you to own your platform. So of course, you should use partners, especially if you
mm,
have big projects. You need the talent and you need to quickly get things going.
yeah.
Partners can be strategic partners that
Mm,
work with you for 10 years. Some of our partners work for 10 years with our customers.
yeah.
But I feel that even if you have one, two, or more partners working with you, you should always have your own internal capacity so that you can create basically sustainability for the platform internally. The software is yours at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So you should at least understand how it's being built, what's the quality that is in there. If it needs to do small projects, small fixes, maintenance, you should probably be able to do it as well. So I think
Yeah.
that's the perfect mix is creating at least some sustainability internally so that you can always keep it going. And
Yeah.
then you use partners either long
Yeah.
term or shorter term, depends on how you prefer to contract in that case.
Yeah, yeah. The advice that we always give customers is, it's great to maybe get off the ground with a partner, but
Uh-huh.
you should look at a kind of transition period where you're slowly bringing in your own people and the partner's slowly transitioning away, but still there for you if needed, right? So that's kind of the advice we
Definitely.
try and also follow.
Definitely. And if you can get one team member in the project, that's the perfect moment to
Yeah,
learn, right? Because everything is happening. You'll see the architecture being designed, the groundwork being put in place. So I feel that that makes things much easier. We also see customers trying to start to do everything on their own, but that's a bigger lift.
Mm.
It's perfectly
Yeah.
doable if you have a strong. What I normally say is let an okay developer becomes a great developer without systems. A great high code developer becomes unbelievably fast without systems. So
Yeah.
if you have a strong team, they will typically be able to transition very easily to OutSystems and ramp up. But if you have a large project that you need, that where you have a hard
Yeah.
deadline, probably the smart way to think is let's find a good partner and work with
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
And that also gives you, by doing that, you're also testing that partner, right? So when you
Yeah.
have
Sure.
another project, a version 2, you
Mm.
can actually keep working with them. So
Yeah.
it's good to have
Yeah.
both models.
Yeah. Yeah. And you touched on a few points earlier, and obviously with the customer success team, it's in the name. You're there to help customers
Yes.
succeed. What are some early challenges you see with customers when when they're adopting the platform, and that your team has to kind of help steer them through?
I still go back to the lack of an interesting project as the main
Mm.
challenge. So
Yeah.
the technology gets out of the way very quickly. So
Yeah.
maybe you can't log in the first day, and the second day you're logging in immediately. So that becomes quite easy. The challenge we have is when you lose steam because the project is not important enough. And sometimes people have competing projects. Well, that means that you really want to invest in that new technology, but you have your old ERP with
Yeah.
constant fires and you are continuously distracted. So I would say that if you have an interesting enough project, you will have people allocated to that project to train to do that project, and that's when things get done. The technical part is typically the easy part. It's really the prioritization, people
Yeah.
allocation. That's where you get where you get.
Yeah. Yeah. And you touched on obviously the building your own teams, and using a partner, and building a COE is something that some do, some don't, right? What would you say is kind of the you know obviously it also depends on what they're building and the size of things,
Sure.
but at what point would you be suggesting that they start thinking about building their own COE?
I feel that you should always think that you should have some centralized capacity and knowledge. Even if you're starting with one project, you should already have in mind that the architect for that project, the person that is responsible for the UI UX, is probably the one that is setting the foundation for future projects. So I don't think COE start, you snap your finger and you hire 10
Yeah.
people and
Yeah.
you
Of
have
course.
the DevOps people and the
Yeah.
observability. That's not how it works. I really think it's typically you have that first project. That first project has two angles: building the project and building the foundations like the SSO I
Yeah.
mentioned, building the integrations with the core and all of that. And what we see many times is that the people involved in that project, they tend to start specializing to become the ones centralizing processes, knowledge, assets for other projects. The moment when you need, in my opinion, a COE, um, once you go to production, you start having a version control delivery cycle challenge, right? So you
Mm.
don't really need a COE, but at least you need practices in place
Yeah.
that are documented, someone to talk to about these practices, like where do I do a hot fix? When do I do a hot fix? And I think it becomes very, very obvious the moment you have multiple teams in parallel. Then it becomes very obvious. Otherwise, you have people connecting to the same system in different
Yeah.
ways, UIs that are inconsistent with each other. You need someone that is creating central assets and methods so that everybody can learn and reuse them. Otherwise, then each project looks like a separate
Yeah.
project. But it
And
starts small. What we see for
yeah.
us,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, is that
No, God.
sometimes the first COE is two people, is an
Yeah.
architect and someone
Yeah.
responsible to make sure the UI is consistent
Yeah.
in all
Yeah.
projects. And then it can
Yeah.
grow from there if you have a lot of teams and
Yeah. Yeah.
projects.
And you spoke about obviously a lot of new customers will always start small, right? They'll kind of test things, and then before they kind of go big and build more kind of mission critical, things without systems.
Okay.
And I know you've probably got a number of use cases, that you could speak about, but is there any that, that you could highlight? Can be more than one that, have really adopted the platform, and in your eyes, you would say, that is success. They've had success with the platform from the beginning.
An example of a successful customer.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. We've seen a lot. So customers, they don't, I would say they don't start big. I wouldn't say they start small. I would say
Yeah.
typically they start in with a medium-sized project.
Yeah.
So a few months of a project. So one customer that is very close to heart is a healthcare customer that I worked with in 2008 when I was still in
Wow.
professional services. That is a
Yeah.
superstar customer
Yeah.
nowadays with OutSystems. It's so they are they're a healthcare customer. They own multiple hospitals and clinics, and at the time they were opening ultra high tech hospital
Mm.
in Portugal. And I don't know if you ever worked in healthcare, but it's a world of exceptions. So
Yeah.
nothing is a straight line in healthcare. It has 7 rules and exceptions that can happen.
Yeah.
Even a simple idea like what is the age of a patient? This is not a straightforward requirement,
Yeah.
setting an age in a patient. So when they started with this challenge of launching a hospital, there was obviously the side of setting up the whole software, and they realized they needed to build a lot of software beyond all the packages that they had in place. They
Mm.
they had to build a lot of software. They started building mostly with .NET,
Yeah.
building portals. They also built a lot of mobility solutions at the time. And it was quite interesting because we had like a visionary, that like an architect visionary heading, and he brought OutSystems as an experiment. And I was heading that small pod of 3 people. And that was there was like an attraction effect. So we started with 3, but then the developers from the other technologies started flocking into OutSystems because those projects they needed desperately to get out to get
Yeah.
that hospital working. They just started flocking and the team started growing. And then there were multiple teams building document management and surgery management processes and all type of processes. So it became a factory with a COE quite fast. In one
Yeah.
year, it looked like that. And the interesting thing with that customer is that it really went through a lot of phases. So it just as the organization grew, the factory had to grow. And you didn't even have time to ask a lot of questions. Like there's a new hospital to operate. You don't have time. You just
Yeah. Yeah.
go fast and make it work. And they did it like challenge after challenge. And now they're building a whole like hospital management system without
Wow.
systems. So replacing a lot of the things that they have in house. So you really saw them growing from that small first team of
Yeah.
3 to mega implementation and
Yeah.
ultra ambitious project. That is what they're doing today. So that's quite
Yeah.
impressive.
And it's nice that it's a story that it's from your early days in OutSystems and that it's still
It's still
going. So
there.
it's a nice long journey.
Yeah. All the customers I built projects for are still customers today without
Wow.
systems.
Wow.
Our first customer
That's
is
really
still a
good.
customer today.
Wow. Yeah, that's very impressive. Definitely. And is there any metrics that your team follows, to kind of, make sure, to see that okay, the customer is truly, getting the most value out of the platform?
For sure. So my team specifically, I work in a team that is called Success at Scale. And one of the things that we do is onboard new customers into OutSystems. This team is part of the overall
Yeah.
customer success team. And if, as I said, if there's one metric that we look at is how much software are our customers building with us. Apps is fundamental.
Yeah.
Another metric that we also look at, as I said, is champions, right? Do we have
Mm.
champions in the organization? If I look specifically at apps and at my team, one of the concepts that we speak a lot about every single day is first value. So we want our customers to reach first value as fast as possible. So how much time does a customer take to reach that first application in production? That's the time. If I had to summarize my team to the simplest, our fundamental goal is to make sure that customers achieve their first application in production as fast as possible. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of other metrics that derive from these. If you think we can talk about apps, we can talk about developers, we can talk about users, visitors. I see that now with launch of Mentor, like how many agents does a
Yeah.
customer go into production? So you can start getting more specific. And as these initiatives pop up, they have also their own metrics. Like Mentor will have how many
Yeah.
applications are built and in
Sure.
production with Mentor, how many developers are using Mentor. We have telemetry for all of that for our day-to-day work. But our focus is getting that first application in production.
Yeah.
That's what we want
Yeah.
to make it happen.
Sure. And not long ago we were at the conference together in Lisbon, and there's all the you would have known about the announcements before they came out, but how has the feedback been? Obviously there's the unified platform now, and how do you see what's the response been like, and how do you see that decision, really kind of helping customers moving forward?
It is having extremely positive response. Customers love the fact that they don't have gates between the two platforms, that they can use OutSystems generically as a platform, be it with
Yeah.
O11 or ODC with the strengths of each of the platforms. I think the probably the biggest change that I notice is for existing customers, the concept of migrating between platforms that kind of disappeared and they just focused on
Yeah.
what projects do I build next more than which platform am I on. That was a bit of a stress factor. And we even see customers coming in that for some reason decided to come into O11, for example, if they wanted to be in a self-managed deployment
Mm.
because they have to. But those customers immediately express curiosity about ODC
Yeah.
and about, like the biggest thing is obviously artificial intelligence, the ability to
Yes.
have agents. So now it's like customers are free, right, to explore any of the
Yeah.
sites because they know they can do it. So the response was
Yeah.
very positive.
Yeah. And obviously, yeah, talking about AI, that's the theme of, I think, every conference at the moment, around the world. How is AI starting to, influence kind of the way you're supporting and engaging with your customers?
So without systems, our digital team is very focused on getting us working with AI. They have a mandate to get AI being used inside out systems. So from very early on, they started doing experiments. It was not on this one conference. It was in the one conference a year before. They were on
Oh,
stage talking about their implementation of AI. So we have a lot of already working solutions going on with AI. The first one was the most obvious one, that was just having a support agent that
yeah.
had phenomenal results. I was looking up the numbers, and we have about 50 to 60% deflection in terms of questions.
Wow.
When I say deflection, I mean someone goes to the OutSystems support portal and they get an answer that is
Yeah. Wow.
satisfactory enough. And even this is for questions, even for incidents, it's pretty high. It's about
Mm.
25%. So that made, for my team, it makes a huge difference because I get
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Of
how-to
course.
questions coming from the world of OutSystems.
Yeah.
So that actually contained the growth. In the previous years, I was seeing the number of questions just going up, and it actually
Yeah.
contained the growth of questions coming into the team. And then we have a lot of experiments going on with AI that can range from, if you think more on the project planning side, the generation of requirements,
Mm.
estimation of requirements. That was one that amazed me a lot. So using the multiple LLMs to assess the complexity and give their own best guess for the
Wow.
project estimation. They almost, the LLMs, apparently they almost have already a bias towards being very
Okay.
conservative, being more
Yeah.
adventurous. And the people that do this, they know that, right? They
Yeah.
already know,
Wow.
yeah, ChatGPT, I know it's going to be very
Yeah.
conservative. And they just play with that, which is interesting. So that you have a lot around requirements. I think probably one of the biggest values of LLMs is just the business knowledge
Yeah.
inside. Like all the generic knowledge of the world is in there, right? If you want to
Yeah.
build a procurement project, it's probably the smart way to start. Besides that, more operational things. We have helpers around us now. Things like if I have a meeting tomorrow with a customer, I get a briefing
Yeah.
talking
Nice.
about the customer, telling me
Yeah.
who is in the meeting, and giving me suggestions of success stories I could talk about in that meeting. It's not very complex, but it can be quite
Yeah.
interesting, especially if you don't know the customer. And another one that is quite useful as well, that's also a great example, is just the generation of presentations that
Mm.
you could do before, but now you can actually personalize them
Yeah.
because you can use AI. Again, if you want to put success stories, if you want to put a bit of interpretation on top of
Mm.
their data, can already generate. Imagine if you're going to do an EBR with a customer, an executive business review can already
Yeah.
generate the basis with context from the customer, context from their industry,
Yeah.
and obviously all their data because we have all of
Yeah.
that connected. So we have a lot of helpers around us
Yeah.
to go faster. And I think we're going to continue developing. A lot of these are ideas that are just developing.
Mm.
I think where we want to go next is AI at least telling us what's the next thing we have to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not happening yet. It's
Yeah.
still, AI is still helping us do things, but it's not yet guiding us on
Sure.
doing it. And then having AI executing, that would be the obvious solution as
Yeah.
well, like booking a meeting with a customer because he
Yeah.
needs it.
Yeah. That's definitely exciting times. And
Yes.
obviously, the conference OutSystems spoke about Workbench, mentor, obviously customers. I encourage to use Workbench before the end of the year as well and build something. How do you what's the impact of those announcements, and are customers kind of taking OutSystems up on that offer and kind of trying
Mhm.
to use it before the year of the end?
There are a lot of customers that are very curious, for sure. And there's also a lot of customers that start already with some AI ideas in mind. I think we are, to be honest, in this whole agentic world, it's obvious we
Yeah.
are still in the infancy. It's like we're
Yeah.
seeing the parts, but we cannot see them, how they will plug
Yeah.
together. And I feel they will plug in a very tight network in the future, and it
Mm.
will be, there will be no other way of doing things. For now, what we see are just ideas and customers already coming with ideas in mind and implementing them. Many of them are still experimental. The obvious idea is like looking up information with much more context. Compared with what you were able to do before, analyzing documents, simplifying approvals. Imagine if you have to approve invoices, things like that, already having
Yeah.
an assessment of what they do. There was a customer last week that we started onboarding, and their first project was email intelligence.
Oh wow. Okay.
Email intelligence was fundamentally scanning a mailbox and generating tasks to operators based on emails that were coming in. So we see these ideas showing. Some are more experimental. There's a bunch
Mm.
already in production, but I feel in the next few years are going to be very intense for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting, and I think a lot of even just the developers, not just customers, just having access to Workbench and becoming AI developers, as Miguel Baltazar has challenged them all to be, right? I think there's been definitely a real positive hype after the conference. Everyone's kind of on a really good positive note. I think it's definitely exciting times looking ahead, and I'm keen to know for you, looking 20 years, you obviously you've been through so many transitions of the business. What are you most excited about going into 2026?
I would say if you say it's such a short period of time, I'm obviously very excited with all the AI capabilities that are
Yeah.
coming and seeing. So, as I said, we launched in October, right? So we're seeing customers experimenting, and let's see now what the big
Mm.
projects, the big AI projects, what
Yeah.
they can actually show us that is possible or not. But I think more generically, if I look at OutSystems, the initial concept still holds really strong today,
Yeah.
right? Just bring the most extreme possible automation to software development so that you can implement your ideas almost
Mm.
without gates. And what excites me a lot about OutSystems is that disruption after disruption, I feel that we were always able to tackle it. And I almost feel that the market came closer to us with every
Yeah.
disruption.
Yeah.
If you think about it, mobile, right? UI frameworks, DevOps, observability, containers, now AI, all of this is just making it possible to build spectacular software, but it's making it extremely hard as well because
Yeah.
it just compounds, right? And that's what OutSystems is trying to solve. And with each disruption, in a way, we have to go after it, make it very accessible to everyone and easy to execute. So I feel that we will always be able to follow the new disruptions,
Yeah.
the new opportunities, and to put it together in this big solution that we have right now that is OutSystems. So in a way, we can always keep up to date with everything that's going on.
Definitely, it's exciting, and I agree that I don't think anything, only all these disruptions. I think our system seems to be perfectly fine and kind of adopting and kind of and it's always been known for its speed, and I think AI is obviously helping that, and even just helping developers as well. But also looking forward to see how things evolve and
For
what's
sure.
next. And I really appreciate you speaking to me, spending the time to speak to me, sharing your journey and, a bit more about, what customer success looks like in your eyes, and I look forward to hopefully speaking again in the future.
Very cool. Thank you so much for us. It was a
Thank you,
pleasure to be
Daniel.
here. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.